All right, well, once again, good morning, everybody. This is Matthew Menendez with White Plume. Shelly Wiggins is here with me as well. If you're just getting logged in, welcome. Do take a minute to go ahead and open up the questions panel. Feel free to ask those as we go. Nobody's going to see those except for me and Shelly, so don't feel bad about asking a question that's on the front of your mind. If you feel like it's something that you should know already, we promise we won't tell anybody about it. We are going to move quickly today. We've got a lot of information to cover. I hope that this will be a helpful webinar for you. We are always looking for ways to make these client webinars even better. So just a reminder, there is a very, very short 3-question survey at the end, which is a great opportunity for you to let us know how we did today, the good, the bad, and the ugly. If there are things that you say, you know, that part of it really wasn't that valuable for me, that is helpful feedback. If there was something that you thought was super helpful for you, let us know that too. The only thing that is worse is getting no feedback at all. So if you don't mind taking that short 3-question, 30-second survey at the end, I would greatly appreciate it. Let me show you what I hope to cover over the next 45, 50 minutes. We're going to show you a demo that kind of walks you through how we are helping clients be successful with MIPS. I'm going to show you how that works in ExceloCapture. I'm going to walk through what changes might need to be made to your forms for those of you who use ExceloCapture. For everybody, it'll be important to think about, how do I validate this type of data in ExceloSmart before it goes out the door, and show you how we send that to our registry partner, Mingle Analytics. Talk a little bit about Mingle Analytics, why we decided to partner with them from a MIPS registry perspective as well. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the MIPS program year for both 2017 and 2018. If there are clients on the call today who have not already started doing their MIPS work for 2017, I would just encourage you that there is still time to avoid the penalty. There's still time to avoid that negative adjustment in 2017. There are some really easy steps that you can do to make sure that you don't get hit with that penalty. It's a 4% penalty on your Medicare reimbursement, and we don't want anybody to get hit with that, because there are very easy ways and a couple of options as far as how you can avoid that. Then we're going to also talk about 2018. There are some changes to the program year in 2018, and we're going to take a deep dive towards the back half of the webinar about how do you choose the right quality measures. Many of you have been doing PQRS for years, but there are some decisions that need to be made for 2017 and 2018 about which quality measures should we report on, should we report as a group or individuals, which mechanisms should we use for our reporting, and which measures should we choose. All right, so I'm going to go through all of that. I'll leave time for questions and answers at the end. If you have questions as we go, feel free to put those in the questions panel, and Shelly will try to answer as many of those as she can during the webinar. But just remember, there are a lot more of you than there are of her today. So let me zoom out, and from a big picture perspective, the majority of you are either using ExceloPass to capture charge data through your EHR, right? Whichever, some of the most popular EHRs that we have ExceloPass interfaces with, but there are many more to that list. Capture the data in your EHR and send that to ExceloSmart so that it can be validated, and make sure that every claim goes out the door completely and correctly the very first time, and we interface that over to your practice management system. Others of you use ExceloCapture, our customized electronic superbill, to try to make that as fast and easy for your clinical team as possible. Some of you use a combination of those two. The thing that we're changing from a MIPS success workflow perspective is really adding the ability to send that data out of ExceloSmart to the most popular registry in the industry, Mingle Analytics. So we're going to be able to capture that quality measure data in your EHR, to be able to send it to ExcellaSmart for validation before that data goes out to your practice management system for your fee-for-service reimbursement, and to Mingle Analytics for your MIPS quality measures, advancing care information measures, and your clinical improvement activities. We can also put that same data capture process in ExcellaCapture. So I'm going to show you what that looks like and how that flows from ExcellaCapture to ExcellaSmart and then ultimately to Mingle Analytics, right? So I'm trying to put this into context from a workflow perspective where you understand what you're doing today and what would be a little bit different. So let's start in ExcellaCapture. Customized electronic super bill. This should be familiar to most of you. For this particular patient, I'm capturing the office visit, I'm capturing the injection, I have the diagnoses, using the historical diagnosis section where that's applicable. But if you notice towards the bottom left, this practice created a section on their form for their MIPS measures, and they've got two measures that they're looking for, 109 and 128 for this particular orthopedic practice. Now you can see I don't have either of those quality codes selected for the osteoarthritis function and pain assessment. Some clients say, you know what, I can capture that fee-for-service data and the quality data in one place. I don't have to go to multiple places to do that. I don't have to rush around at the end of the year to go back and do chart audits and capture this data. I can get actionable information to the right person at the right time and even do some real-time performance feedback. This is something that's available in ExcellaCapture today. It's called onboard validation. This is allowing you to display some of those validation rules at the point of care in ExcellaCapture. We don't want to turn your doctors into coders, but we can give them this type of feedback that says, hey, this is one of those quality measures that we're doing for MIPS that we've selected. We have a patient that meets the criteria for the denominator for this particular measure, but I don't see where we've selected that either yes, we assessed their osteoarthritis symptoms and functional status, or no, we did not. Reminding them right there at the point of care to capture that data. Now that can be configured to fire differently for different providers, differently for MAs than it does for MDs, or differently for scribes than it does for the doctors. Okay, but we're trying to capture that data in one spot. Now, regardless of where you capture this information, whether it's in your EHR or in ExcellaCapture, that data is flowing over into ExcellaSmart in order to do our post-encounter coding. This is what most of you are doing today in ExcellaSmart. You're validating to make sure that we look at only those encounters that have exceptions. And some of you are unbelievably productive at this. Our super users in ExcellaSmart on average process 148 encounters per hour. And they have to make changes to 60% of those. And that prevents denied claims. It helps you capture missed charges, but it also lets us now put in these quality measure edits. It says, again, for this patient, I have a diagnosis of osteoarthritis of the knee, but I don't see my quality measure code. Again, have we assessed the osteoarthritis symptoms and functional status? If so, we want to capture that and make sure that we're going to perform well on that quality measure. So what we have happening here is the ability to capture the data through ExcellaPass or through ExcellaCapture, the ability to validate that in ExcellaSmart. And then we're going to send that HL7 outbound message not only to the practice management system, but also to Mingle Analytics. Now, when that data gets to Mingle Analytics, it's a web-based registry. And one of the great things is it allows you to review, again, all of that data before it is ever submitted to CMS. We want to make sure that you are getting the score that your practice has targeted. For some of you, that may be just avoiding the negative adjustment, but others of you may have grander ambitions. Maybe you're really trying to go for that larger positive adjustment, right? For over the exceptional performance threshold of 70. So you'll be able to see and drill down into each of the 3 categories for 2017. We believe those will be the same 3 categories for 2018 for your quality, advancing care information, and your improvement activities. So if you want to drill down into quality to see how we're doing, you can do that, and you'll be able to get into each different measure to see how you're doing on each measure that you've selected. You'll be able to drill down and look at that on a per provider basis. Some of you may be wanting to report as individual providers. Most of the clients that we've spoken with so far kind of tend towards the group reporting option, just because that's a little bit easier from an administrative perspective. But you can still slice and dice that data either way. And you'll be able to see, again, how everybody's doing from a advancing care information perspective. Are you going just for those base measures, or are you doing some of the performance measures? What does that score look like? That way you've got room to make improvements before the data is submitted to CMS. Mingle Analytics actually lets you see what your performance score will be before you submit the data. And we want to make that as easy as possible for you. And so that's what we've done. That's what we've put together. We're trying to package this in a way that makes this very easy for our clients. So that all together in one package, you get the Mingle Analytics 2017 Performance Edition, gives you access to their registry platform. White Plume will work with you, and Mingle Analytics will work with you to make sure that we're providing you some consulting on your quality measure selection. What that means is there are a lot of quality measures to choose from. How do I know the ones that are the best ones for my practice? A lot of people make a common mistake of just trying to pick the easiest quality measures. And while that is one strategy, there are some reasons that may not be the best strategy for your practice. We're going to spend the back half of the webinar really walking through that and understanding that, so that you can get a little bit of an idea of why we think that's so important, not just for 2017, but to make sure that you have success with MIPS in 2018 as well. Included in that package as well is adding the quality measures that are selected to your Capture form, so that you can quickly and easily select that data when you're also completing the fee-for-service information in Capture. We will build in those custom rules and get them installed in Smart, so that if somebody misses something on the clinical side, that the revenue cycle team, the billing and coding team can identify that and make those corrections in near time, rather than waiting to do that at the end of the year, right? Think about the process. It is much better to do this process as you go, rather than waiting to the end of the year. Trying to think about MIPS is a little bit like doing your taxes. If you have not kept up with any data or any receipts, it is much harder to do those taxes in April. What we want to make sure that we do is we capture that data as we go and make sure that we're reporting good, clean data to CMS so that you can get a great score from a MIPS perspective. We'll also include in that the outbound HL7 interface to Mingle Analytics. Now, from a pricing perspective, there's part of this that is on a per provider basis. There's part of this that is on a per practice basis. It'll depend a little bit on the size of your practice, but if this is something that you're interested in, you can let us know through the questions panel. You can talk individually with your CAE. They can get you that information, and it's really just kind of a here's the one-time cost for the 2017 MIPS Success package. Here's some reasons why we think this is the easiest way to make MIPS work and the way to get the best score. Number one, Mingle Analytics has a lot of experience in both the PQRS reporting and the MIPS reporting. The CMS report that came out with the most recent data lists Mingle Analytics as the top registry for group reporting. Over 24,000 providers last year used Mingle Analytics. They've also had outstanding results from a success perspective. So it's not just volume, it's about success. Overall, registries are a great way to report. They have much higher success rates than trying to report via claims. Overall, registries have about a 93% success rate. You can see Mingle Analytics has a 99.8% success rate. That was one of the reasons why we wanted them to be our registry partner for MIPS. They do support all 3 categories of MIPS for 2017. Obviously, the cost or resource use category is not factored into your 2017 score, even though some of you would be quick to point out that it is being calculated. Medicare is doing that off of claims data. So you can use a single MIPS submission with Mingle Analytics Registry. And I think it's really important. Some of you may have another registry that you're already using. One of the things that we would recommend doing is making sure that we optimize the data before submitting to CMS. And you're getting that done in ExcellaSmart. You know, when we're doing the post-encounter coding, ExcellaSmart can identify those encounters that are eligible for the measures that you have selected that do not have the numerator data. We can stop you and alert you to that very, very quickly. But also through a registry, you're able to review that data before your final submission to CMS. Okay? And the last piece is this is a nice way to make MIPS work in your existing workflow. Right? We're trying to, a lot of people in the industry are tired. They're tired of a lot of the change. They're tired of a lot of the government regulation, and MIPS feels like just another program that they have to do, right? We want to make that as easy as possible for both your clinical team and your revenue cycle team. All right. So for those of you who are still working on 2017, remember 2017 is a transition year. We've got a lot of flexibility that Medicare has given us. And remember, the only way that you lose in 2017 is if you don't participate at all. If you don't participate at all, you will get a negative adjustment, which is a penalty of 4%. Now, if you just want to avoid the penalty, all you have to do is do something. You can do one quality measure, right? You can do one improvement activity. You can do the base requirements for advancing care information. You've got some flexibility there. But if you want to do a little bit more, and go for a higher score, you need to participate a little bit more. One of the complaints of some of the programs that were sunsetted that have been consolidated under a QPP in MIPS, meaningful use, PQRS, the value-based modifier, there were components to each of those programs that were all or nothing, right? Meaning they're basically pass-fail. And if you fail, there's no partial credit. Under MIPS, there is lots of partial credit. There is lots of flexibility. That's really good news, right? That means you can make some decisions. You can do some things to try to make this very easy for your physicians and make it actually beneficial and helpful for your patients. But the flip side of that coin is it means there are some decisions that you need to make. You need to decide, what's my strategy for 2017? And more importantly, what's my strategy for 2018? Where are we going to participate? Where are we not going to participate? But let me review just one last time. If there's anybody that hasn't started yet, there is still time for you. All you have to do to avoid the penalty in 2017 is do one quality measure. Just one. Or you can do one improvement activity. Again, if you want the full list of quality measures, the full list of improvement activities, the full list of the ACI measures, we can send you that. We've already downloaded that and formatted it in a way that makes a lot of sense, a lot better than what's on the CMS website. If you've got questions on that, let us know. We can help you with that. So you can do one quality measure or one improvement activity or the 5 core measures under advancing clinical information, right? And the 5 core measures under advancing clinical information are really pretty simple. It is e-prescribing, right? Are you doing any prescriptions electronically? Right? Doing a security risk assessment. I am sure all of you have done that for HIPAA already. Right? Do patients have access to their data in a timely fashion? And then have we sent and received a transition of care document? Very, very basic stuff. But again, you don't have to do all 3 of those. If you want to just avoid the penalty, all you have to do is 1. Right? Now, if you want to do more, you can get a higher score. And the higher your score, the better chances you have for actually getting some bonus dollars out of MIPS. Right? So there are some changes for 2018. Before we jump in and look at the quality measures, let me give you just a quick overview of some of the changes in the 2017 final rule and the 2018 proposed rule. So in order to participate in MIPS, you have to exceed the low volume threshold. And in 2017, that was pretty low. So if you're reporting as a group, did your group see more than 100 unique Medicare patients? If you're reporting as an individual, did that individual provider see more than 100 unique Medicare patients? There's also a dollar threshold of $30,000 that allowed Medicare charges. For 2018, that bar goes up significantly. The low volume threshold from a dollar perspective is $90,000. From a unique patient perspective is $200. Some people have been questions on that. The hard part is you don't know if you're going to be close. You may not know until the end of the year if you're going to exceed those thresholds or not. Right? That's tricky for people that are right on the line, because by the time you get to the end of the year, if you haven't done all the things that you need to do from a MIPS perspective, it's too late at that juncture. But they're moving that threshold up in an effort to help small practices be able to be successful. You'll see several changes that they've made trying to make MIPS easier, particularly for smaller practices. The cost measure was taken out of the final rule for 2017, and that means it does not contribute to your MIPS score. However, they are calculating that cost measure. That is the one measure that CMS will calculate for every single clinician, because they are getting that data every day from their claims, right? That's one of the things that we talked about from a risk adjustment perspective that's important to think about. That cost measure is proposed that will not be in the final MIPS score for 2018 either. Okay. Another change that happens in 2017 to 2018 is the performance threshold. Remember, the performance threshold is the number that you have to exceed in order to avoid a penalty. That bar is very low in 2017. You've got to get 3 points or higher. And the exceptional performance threshold is the number that you have to exceed if you want to participate in the exceptional performance bonus dollars, right? This is a pool that's set aside specifically for outstanding performance, and you have to score over 70 to be eligible for that. The performance threshold for 2018 is proposed to be 15. This is one area that I would not be surprised to see that come back down in the final rule. Right? That might end up being a little bit less than 15. But I'll show you, there's still a lot that you can do in a pretty non-intrusive way to get to a score of 15 from a MIPS perspective. Except for performance threshold will still be 70 for next year. Now, the maximum penalty for this year is 4%. Next year is 5%. You'll continue to see that increase. And the reporting period this year It was very easy if you could do a 90-day reporting period. They're trying to look at doing that for 12 months next year. Wouldn't be surprised to see that get changed as well. Two additional changes for 2018 that are new to the program. There is a small practice bonus. So this is for provider groups that are less than 15 providers. They get bonus points just for being a small practice. Okay, so you can see you're already, if you're a small practice, you're already a third of the way there to avoiding the negative adjustment in 2018. All right, there's also bonus points, 3 bonus points available for complex patients. This is for practices whose average patient is in the top 25% from a risk perspective. What that means, and the way that they do that, if you've been to some of our other webinars, we're getting into the topic of HCC coding here. Remember, HCC coding looks at your patient demographic factors, it looks at the patient diagnosis factors, and assigns a risk score to that patient. That is that patient's HCC score. So practices that treat older and sicker patients will receive those bonus points. And the way that CMS calculates that is based off of the diagnosis information submitted on claims. Okay, so when we talk about making sure you're accurately documenting and coding comorbidities, this is a place where that can come into play. Those are the big high-level program changes that you need to be thinking about as we kind of start to head into 2018. But what I really want to make sure that we focus on for the second half of the webinar is correctly choosing the quality measures. You know, when you think, and that's really important if you want to score well from a MIPS perspective, you have to do well in the quality category, right? Now, remember, just a quick refresher on how the scoring works. It's like going back to college, right? Everybody's going to get a MIPS score of 0 to 100, and you're going to be compared to your peers. It's going to look like a bell curve distribution. And the performance threshold, right, that's the number, that's the score of 3 for this year that we talked about. Anybody that is below that is going to get a negative adjustment, a penalty. Anyone that is above that is eligible for a positive adjustment. Okay. Now, those adjustments do not happen immediately. So your 2017 is the performance year. You will get the results in 2018. And then those bonus or penalties are made to your fee-for-service reimbursement in 2019. You know, that is a long time, obviously, to wait. But that's the, you know, and CMS has had complaints and had requests of people trying to shorten that cycle. But that's how it is right now. And I don't expect that to change in the near term. Now, the lower your score or the higher your score, the higher your penalty or the higher your bonus. Now, if you're really going to not get a large bonus if you're somewhere between the 3 and the 70. And the reason for that is that total adjustments must be revenue neutral to CMS. Right? What that remember what that means is CMS is taking money from the people with bad scores and giving that money to the people with good scores. Right? They're taking that money from the poor performers and trying to give it to the good performers from a MIPS perspective. And with that performance threshold being so low, we do not expect for there to be, there will be more people that score over 3 than score under 3. And what that means is there won't be very many dollars available to distribute the people who do well in MIPS in the first year. Now, there's a $500 million pool set aside for the people that score over a 70, right? So it doesn't matter how many people get the negative adjustment. Those dollars are available for the exceptional performers, right? But if you think that's where you want to be, and you look at the way that the scores are calculated, 60% of your score in 2017 and in 2018 is coming from quality measures. So if you don't do quality measures at all, it is impossible to get a score of 70. Right? And if you don't do quality measures really well, it is impossible to get a score of over 70. Right? Improvement activities, advancing care information, that's a smaller percentage of your overall MIPS score. Right? There may be some places that you say, you know, it's not worth trying. That requires too much effort to get too few points in that particular category. I'm not going to do that, right? But you can get 50% of your ACI points just from those base measures, right? That's pretty straightforward for clients who have an EHR installed that they're already using. But the quality measures is really where you're going to see a distinction in practice performance, where you're going to see some practices do better than others. And I want to make sure that you make good decisions from that perspective. Right? This is important for you, whether you're going to help try to report these quality measures through White Plume with Mingle Analytics, or if you've got another way that you're reporting that. It's really important to make sure that you pick the right quality measures. Okay, so full participation. If you really want to go for a good score, you need to choose 6 measures to report, and there are a total of 271 measures across these 6 different domains to choose from, and that's a bit overwhelming, right? That's a bit overwhelming to think about, and so what a lot of people will do is say, you know what? Quality measures are very similar to PQRS. Maybe I'll just do the same measures we did for PQRS. Again, that's one strategy, but I want to make sure that you fully understand the implications of those strategies. PQRS was basically pay for reporting, right? As long as you reported the data, right, you would get your bonus, you would avoid your penalty. Now, under MIPS, the quality measures under MIPS, yes, the descriptions and the measures are the same, but they're actually grading the performance now. If you want to get the full value of the available points for that quality measure, you can get up to 10 points per measure. Your performance rate has to be very strong. And again, it's a lot of your score. It's a high percentage of your MIPS composite score for both 2017 and 2018. After that, it'll be 30%, which will be tied for the largest category with cost. Remember, the 2 things that Medicare really cares about are cost and quality, right? So you can report more than 6, but they're only going to grade the top 6, right? And we said we're going to know what that grade is. We're going to know what the outcome is from Mingle Analytics before we ever submit that to CMS. We want to make sure we do the right ones. Now, each of these measures that we choose is going to be graded against peer benchmarks. Basically, these are historic performance rates from previous years. And we know what those benchmarks are. I'm going to share some of that data with you today, because those benchmarks are measure specific. They're also reporting mechanism specific, and that'll make a difference. I'll show you some examples that'll help with that. So we've got to decide, am I going to do individual or group reporting? Now, I've got to decide that all the way across the board on MIPS. I can't report as individual for quality and as a group for advancing care information. Most people are reporting as group, but know that there's an option for reporting as an individual. We also have to choose which measures do I want to report on. right? How do I go from 275 down to 6? And then I've got to decide on my reporting mechanism. I can do that via claims. That's still an option, but it's not a very good one. I can do that via registry. I can do that via EHR, right? And those have implications on my benchmarks. They have implications on which measures I can choose from. So I'm going to share some of that information with you as we walk through, so you can get an idea and look at some specific examples that'll help kind of congeal that in your mind. So if I look at some of the CMS data, this is the most recent data that's available from CMS. It's their CMS 2015 reporting experience. I've got the link down there in the bottom. So if you get the slides, you can if you want to go to the, it's a 60-page report, but I pulled this out of it. And this shows the top 10 measures based on how many providers were reporting each of those measures. So some of these should probably look familiar to you, right? If you look at the top three are documentation of current meds, tobacco screening and cessation, and BMI screening and follow-up. Each of those had over 100,000 providers that were submitting that measure under PQRS in 2015. Those were very, very popular measures. And you can see that as you get lower in this table, it drops off pretty quickly, right? So there's a lot of concentration in just a few measures, and then it tails off pretty quickly after that. And so if you said, you know what, I'm gonna do the same thing. I did my documentation of current medications in the medical record under PQRS. I'm going to keep doing that for my quality measure under MIPS. We've already got the process in place. We're already doing it. That makes sense. I think that's how I can get the most points. That's where I'd say you may want to be careful. There's a difference between pay for reporting and pay for performance. Let's look at the performance benchmarks for that particular measure. This screen has a lot of information on it. Let me walk you through this, try to make a little bit more sense out of it. So you will get a score, a performance score for the measure. And then that will be compared to the benchmark. And the benchmarks are divided into deciles. And what a decile means is are you in the top 10%? Are you in the next 10%? Are you in the next 10% after that? Decile 10 means you did better than 90% of your peers. Decile 9 means you did better than 80% of your peers and worse than 10% of your peers. It's the individual decile. And the number of points you get for that individual quality measure will be based on the decile that your performance rate falls in. And so you can see, if you want to, for this particular measure, if you want to get more than 3 points, which is the minimum, you'll have to score over 84% if you report via registry, over 87% performance rate if you report via EHR, and over 98% if you report via claims. So you see how the benchmarks are different for each of the reporting mechanisms. So the way that you decide on how you're going to report your quality measures matters. You have to pick one reporting mechanism for all of your quality measures. You can't pick and choose for each individual quality measure. Now, the other thing that I would call to your attention here is that each of these reporting mechanisms, it says it's topped out. And what that means is a couple of things. It means, number one, that everybody's doing so well in this measure that we're not able to really differentiate a lot of performance. Technically speaking, it means more than half of the providers that are reporting this measure score 95% or above from a performance perspective. The metaphor that I'd use on that is, it means that everybody is able to get that that question correct on the test, that it doesn't really tell you who's learned a lot in the class this year. It's not a good question anymore. And that means it's not going to be around much longer. It means CMS is eventually going to phase that measure out. So while you may be able to choose that measure this year, you may not be able to do that next year. Okay? It also means it's very difficult to get a good score. Now you can, I had this question come up before, you can still get 10 points for measure 130, reporting via claims, even though it doesn't look like there's very much dark red there on the screen, but you have to get 100%. You have to get 100%. If you miss just one, you will not get the full 10 points. So it's very hard to score well here. Let's look at the next one, the second most popular measure from the 2015 PQRS period, tobacco screening and cessation. Again, here you can see we're topped out in claims, not yet on the registry or EHR reporting mechanism. Not quite as hard to score well, but still pretty difficult. Okay, you still got to score pretty well in order to get a lot of points from a MIPS perspective. Right? So if you think you can do, if you think your performance rate can be at 100%, this may be a good measure for you to choose. However, if you think you want some room for error, it may not be the measure for your practice for this year. As we go further down the list, you can see how that changes. Right? This is still in the top 10 list, but further down, that means fewer people are reporting on it. That means fewer people are having great scores on it, and that means it's easier for you to score well this year on this particular measure. Now, notice this measure, you are not allowed to report via EHR. It's not an option. Not all measures are available for all reporting mechanisms. It's one of the things that you do need to consider is, do I want to choose my reporting mechanism first and then look at the available quality measures? Or do I want to choose my quality measures first and then look at my reporting mechanism? I can see arguments in both directions, but it's something that you need to consider. Not all quality measures are available for all reporting mechanisms. Okay, I think everybody's starting to get the concept of how the deciles work, how that translates to your score on these individual measures. Let me give you an example. Let's drill down and be a bit more specific and look at one of these examples. All right, here's measure 14. If you go look this up on the CMS website, you will see this description. It's in a 6-page document that has a flow chart that's nearly impossible to read. So I thought, how can I show this to you in a picture that makes it easier for me to understand and makes it easier for me to explain, and hopefully is helpful for you as well. Let me show you how this works. Basically, we're looking at my patients that were 50 years and older that have age-related macular degeneration. What percentage of those did we do a dilated macular exam, and we documented whether they had macular thickening or hemorrhage or not, and we documented the severity of their macular degeneration. That's what the measure is looking at. Okay, so here's how I think I can best explain it in a picture. Imagine that this is your total patient population. This is an ophthalmology measure, so for an ophthalmology practice, this is your patient population. Now, this measure is looking only at those that are 50 and over. So immediately that eliminates some of my patients. They are not eligible for this particular measure. Now, another criteria is they have a diagnosis of age-related macular degeneration. So again, that's going to eliminate some of my patients that are not eligible for this quality measure. And we also had to have an office visit this year. So there may have been a couple of people that we didn't see this year. So that ends up with the total population in my practice that are at least eligible for quality measure number 14. So what we're going to do is we're going to put those over here on the right-hand side. That's the denominator for this measure. It means there are 23 patients that we saw this year that are over the age of 50 that have a diagnosis of age-related macular degeneration. Now we have to do the numerator portion of this, right? And that says who had a dilated macular exam and who did not, right? It seems so simple that there would only be two answers to that question, either yes they did or no they didn't, but there are actually four potential answers. Three of them are no they did not, right? So no they didn't, but it was because the patient had a good reason, right? I've been that patient before that says, I don't have time for you to dilate my eyes today, right? And so if you didn't do it and you documented that there was a patient-specific reason for not doing that exam, that patient is not included in the numerator. They drop out. You may have had a medical reason that you didn't do the dilated exam today for this particular patient. If you've got that documented, those patients drop out of your denominator. So my denominator is not 23, it's actually 20. So I'm not going to get penalized for not doing the exam if there was a patient reason or a medical reason that I didn't do it. Now, if I just didn't do it because I forgot or I didn't document the reason as to why we didn't do that, right? Those stay in my denominator. Now I've got to figure out my numerator. That's pretty easy. It's the ones that are left. Yes, we performed the exam and we documented it, right? So that's 18. 18 patients out of the 20 that we documented the exam for. And what that means from a scoring perspective is it's got to be the percentage of patients. So I'm going to take that numerator, 18, and it's divided by the denominator of 20. And that's what gives me my measure performance score of 90%. 18 divided by 20 equal to 90. And then I'm going to come over here and look at my benchmark and see that I would get 3 points out of a possible 10 if I was reporting via claims, and I would get 5 points out of the possible 10 if I was reporting via registry. 6 quality measures, up to 10 points each, up to 60 total points of my MIPS score. I'm going to get at least 3 for every single one. So for those of you who are already thinking and doing the math in your head about next year, saying I've got to get at least a 15 to avoid the negative adjustment, and I can do 6 quality measures, and I'm going to get at least 3 points each. 3 times 6 is 18, right? Even if I don't score well, I can avoid the negative adjustment just doing the quality measures in 2018. But we want you to score well. That's why we want you to choose the right measures, the ones that make sense for your practice, the ones that you can score well on. And that's why we want to make the workflow really, really simple. To capture that data, to make sure it gets validated in ExcelisSmart so that the data that we're sending to the registry is as clean as the data that we're sending to your practice management system. Right? We try to put that together in an easy package that gives you everything that you need in order to check those boxes and be successful from a MIPS perspective in 2017 and 2018, right? And we think that's important. Mingle Analytics has been a good partner with us so far. They have a lot of experience. They've delivered outstanding results. It covers all of the domains under a single MIPS submission. And you put that together with your existing white Plume solution. That helps you optimize the data before it's submitted and make for an easy implementation with your existing workflow. All right, now I know I went through that quickly. I know the quality measure scoring, the MIPS scoring is incredibly complicated. But I hope that's given you some things to think about. I hope if you haven't started yet, that I've given you some encouragement to be successful in 2017. Don't let yourself get that negative penalty. If you've got follow-up information that you'd like, the recorded version of the webinar, if you'd like the copy of these slides, if you'd like a copy of this in PDF, if you'd like all of the measures in that handy-dandy Excel workbook, we're happy to send those to you as well. Shelley has been typing furiously throughout the webinar, so thank you for all of your good questions. She is at least telling me for right now, she has been able to answer all of them. And so I think we've got a good handle on that. We'll leave that questions panel up for a few additional minutes in case anybody has questions that they haven't typed in yet. And when you leave, don't forget, please take 30 seconds to fill out the survey on how we did on the webinar today. If you've got comments on the content, if you've got comments on the presenter, that type of feedback is incredibly helpful for us. I read every single one of those, and I want to continue to make these webinars as valuable for you as possible. So if you've got ideas of how to make it better, if you've got comments on what we're doing well, please let us know that either